That's not for my neck.
Nice. Coach Scott Sonnon, the creator, founder of TACFIT and the Club Bell. You've changed millions of people around the world, including mine. So it's beyond an honor to have you, to be able to talk to you on the show. Matt Wise.
Yep.
Wiswesser.
Yeah.
Wiswesser.
Yeah.
Okay. TACFIT team leader and great friend for a lot of years.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you.
No, thank you
my
for having
privilege.
us. Yeah.
What? How did TACFIT start? How did CST start?
Those are two different questions. I mean,
I guess to start with CST.
yeah.
How was that born?
That goes back to the genesis of the Club Bell. I mean, before CST, there was the Club Bell. CST is the answer to how do you train weight that attempts to pull you off the earth, rather than weight that you're trying to drive into to break gravity. 93, I went to World Games and World University Games. I was competing against the Russian captain. He was a two-time USSR champion in Greco and a two-time USSR champion in Judo, so he was a stud. I only had 2 years of Sambo training at that point.
Sambo.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was
Sambo.
Sambo division at the World University Games, and it was that was its entrance the first year that it was at World University Games. But he just took me for flight lessons. It was unbelievable. I mean, fortunately, I wasn't very good at technique, but I was very good at being thrown. So I could land on my feet. I didn't get scored on too much. Cartwheeled out of a lot. That was I didn't get killed. That was my victory. But the one throw, my arm, the lower forearm snapped. It was close to a flying arm bar. He was so smooth, and he wasn't trying to hurt me. I was just a little bit slow in defending myself, or too strong in defending myself. How's that? And when it snapped, I didn't want to lose all the team points by forfeiting the match, so I fought the rest with the arm swelling up, which wasn't too bright. But, I mean, you're young and you think medals are important.
Right?
So it was about 7 years later, because I didn't have health insurance, so it didn't really mend the way it should, and I had avascular necrosis. The bone died, and on top of my joint disease from when I was a kid, the connective tissue didn't really lay down. I couldn't exercise in the normal way. I couldn't press weight without a lot of damage at the time. Like I can now that I figured out what's going on with my connective tissue. But back then I didn't really know. So about 7 years, it took 6 or 7 years until I figured out that if I start to pull or part the tissues like they when they placed it in traction, that would stimulate the bone growth, like the osteoclastic, osteoblastic effect. And the same thing happens to connective tissue. The fascia, it starts to lay down extra collagenous fibers. It becomes a new fabric. I didn't really get it, though. Like I said, it's like the slow learners program. 7 years later, I was at 99 World Police Games in Kaunas, Lithuania. And the Tajikistani team was throwing the Mongolians and the Bulgars off the mat. It was just unbelievable. And they were even toe-to-toe. The Tajiks were toe-to-toe with the Muscovites, who are the best in the world at their sport. So being the naive sponge that I am, that night I went to the Tajiks, and I said, guys, sorry, my name's Scott, I'm from USA. How are you doing that? And they just shook their head and we wrestle. What are you talking about? But later that night, I saw them training together rhythmically, swinging these large wooden lollipops.
What? Wooden meals, huh?
Yeah, right. And it was part of that Zorkaneh, their Persian house of strength. And I tried to ask questions, but there was a language barrier, and it didn't really matter. Once I saw it, the brain wants to figure out a way. So I had a dream. A couple nights later, it wasn't the same night, again, slow learner, but I had a dream where I felt like my body was being drawn and quartered, like two horses in my arms, 2 horses in my legs, but I was getting stronger from it. And then the dream flipped to these big wooden lollipops, and I woke up so excited, like I got it. So it's not just the healing of tissues that can be caused by traction, the gradual pull. But what if I swung weight? Wouldn't that do the same thing? Because I had been trying to use rubber tubes, and I followed the Russian training, their cosmonaut program of how do you train in zero gravity? I mean, I'd have an awesome deadlift in microgravity, but attaching rubber bands to the walls, you can increase resistance, and it's a form of traction in a way. But the swinging weight concept was pretty interesting. So I got together with of all things, an aerospace engineering firm to develop this original club bell, because there are challenges. How do you keep the center of balance constant? How do you have the least amount of disturbance when a person grabs a new club bell? There has to be something. It can't be so invariant, or you create too much confusion in the tissue. If every club bell has a different weight distribution, and that kind of math is way above my pay grade. So I found a firm, and he ended up becoming a very good friend. You met him. When he designed the club bell, that's not the end. That was just the beginning. Now what do we do with it? How do we train these odd angles? How do we get the body to respond to this weight attempting to pull itself out, and the torque that generates from that, the leverage that generates from that? What's actually happening in the body it became questions, not answers. Like how's my body responding to this weight that's being swung? And when I lift it, since it's asymmetrical, the weight's on one side, even if I do a normal exercise like a bench press, holding the club bell, the weight is pulling me to one side, so it's traction across a diagonal line. So how is my body responding to this? It's not a training effect, it's a discovery of here's a lock, here's a limitation. So I tried to figure out what do we need to do in order to prepare ourselves for swinging this so that we get 100% out of the benefit of it. For a while, back in the 90s, I was exploring mobility, meaning mobility is kind of a common word now.
Yeah.
But back then, I remember I was one of the lecturers for the NSCA's conference at Wake Forest University, and quite a few of I would say most of them, most of the strength and conditioning coaches laughed at me when I presented my mobility part.
Like the first person to kind of coin that phrase, right?
Yeah.
Mobility.
Yeah. And Pavel Tetsulin even tipped his hat to me. He said, look,
He mentions you in his book.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mention him in your book, your Club book.
You gotta tip your hat to the luminaries. Pavel did a huge amount for, and he's too often forgotten for the way things have proliferated. You've got to go back and you've got to look at who contributed what so that you understand the why.
Yeah, like I feel like with you, a lot of people they do these little flows, and they kind of, it all started with you.
It all started with questions. Like I had lots of questions. I didn't have a lot of answers. And I think that's the only academically honest position that we can have is what's going on here? How am I responding to this? What's my purpose behind this? And what's the purpose behind that? Why do I need to be fit? So the mobility component, not to go into the weeds there, the mobility component was to try and prepare the joints so that I could best swing this weight. Because, that osteochondrosis I had as a kid, it would flay up my connective tissue like cotton candy. But mobility would lay down those fibers, and then they would glue them together, lubricating them with this glue. And that tackiness to the fascia allowed me to prep so that the fabric was knit together. So when you pull it, it doesn't tear. It doesn't have that burn when something's pulling it. You feel like a fabric is burning. That's those adhesions starting to rip. We don't want them to rip. We want them to be challenged. So the enzymes encourage more collagen fibers to lay down. And it just becomes more lattice work. Again, I didn't know this at the time. I had lots of questions. Like, what is the right way to warm up? Because what does it matter if my core is warm? Like, what does that mean? Nobody questioned what a warm-up is supposed to do. So what's the purpose of a warm-up? And, well, it's to be able to enable you to move the thing that requires exertion. Okay. So what is this causing me to do? Well, it's trying to pull me apart. Okay. Then I need to encourage the tissues to resist traction. Mobility does that. It glues it together. But that's not the only part. It's then how do you compensate for what you had done? Exertion adds challenge, but you need it to relax. If it stays tense, it creeps, leads to DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness, and the soreness creates secondary and tertiary problems. You create undesirable, unwanted adaptations from being sore. You change your posture, and then you go and you exercise again on top of that altered posture because of your soreness, which is self-fulfilling. So how do you stop doing what you just did? That's how I think of a warm-up. How do I no longer be shaped like that pull-up or that push-up or that sit-up? I need to be unshaped from my exertion. Equipose is one of the docs that I studied with called it. So that compensatory movement was something I had to come up with. And fortunately, that's still I believe that's something that the system is contributing to the industry. Compensatory movement is starting to pick up, but hopefully it doesn't become muddied like mobility, because mobility is no longer mobility. Mobility is you go out and you do whatever fancy movement seems exotic and wild. Like, this is interesting, and it stimulates my interest. But then as soon as they're disinterested, they stop that movement because it doesn't have a purpose. They're doing it because it's exciting, not because it's relevant.
I mean, that's why it's important to understand the whys behind everything.
Right.
Why are you doing this?
So I'm pretty radical in that I don't want to exercise unless I get 100% out of it, because any exercise, physical exercise that I do is causing wear and tear to me. So if I'm not growing from it, I am destroying from it. How do I get 100% out of the exercise? How do I use a scalpel, not a pickaxe? And that warm up and cool down, the mobility and the functional opposite compensation, I want to do the exact opposite of the thing that I had just exerted myself in. And then swinging and moving weight in odd angles that both compresses and pulls apart my body. That became CST, the 3 rings of CST: mobility, triplanar, traction, compression, and compensation, functional opposite training. Wow. It was a lot of iterations. Like, it's a lot of iterations. It'll always iterate. It will always continue to evolve. If it stops evolving, if it becomes, this is a codified system, we know how to do this, we're wrong. Because every new person that enters into it is a new jigsaw puzzle. What does that person need? And
we're all different.
Yeah, it's totally customized. One of my professors called it individualized response stereotypy. You have a stereotype that's completely individualized to you, and how you respond to this exercise is going to be unique. And then that means that how you prepare and how you compensate will be different in the same class. I could be doing a front swing, you could be doing a front swing, but how you should prepare, let's say your hips tight from jiu-jitsu and my neck's tight from the airplane, totally different. The effect that happens to you from the same exercise, let's say you challenge rectus femoris from release, and I challenge my rhomboids from pulling my scaps back into place, I get taller, then the compensation has to be the opposite of that. So even though we're training together, we're playing next to each other.
Different needs.
Yeah. So the system, it will constantly evolve if it is a system and not a program.
I tell people, I watch your TED Talks. I don't know how many times.
Sorry.
And I get emotional like every time I watch it. I don't know, it just resonates with me every part, And I tell people, you had the learning disabilities and traumatic childhood, and it caused your brain to be different. And correct me if I'm wrong. These are my perception, right? And then you finally found your learning style through martial arts.
Yeah.
And then you kind of figured out, why did you start to understand things when you started to do martial arts? And, do that kind of lifestyle. And I mean, to me, like TACFIT, it's like a martial art with yourself. You're not fighting anybody else, but it's with yourself, like mastery of self, connecting your breath with the movement and just that awareness, that, really only martial arts can give you. And, like when I train, like the fight is always keep my technique, my breath, my heart rate is 60-80%.
Right.
And if I start to go over that, I'm losing.
Yeah.
And that's actually how we met, right? Originally, I got tired in my UFC debut, and he told me, you breathe too much. I'm like, what? I didn't breathe enough. That's why I got tired. And I was like, yeah, you're over breathing. And then it just started to get me thinking differently. And I guess give your say a couple words on that, like the martial arts, what it's done for you, and helped you, how it helped you. Because we just trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh my gosh.
You're like all, so busy. And
I don't think it was training. I think it was a beatdown.
But you're like, it's like, I tell people it's like the fountain of youth. And here we have, you're like, you just turned 50 and you look like you're a ripped 20-year-old. And you move like a 20-year-old, like a kid moving around. And you just got off the plane, got in like super late last night. And it's just like, it blows my mind. I already thought of you like already, up so highly. And then you come in and then, just you can train with whoever. And it's just, like it really blows my mind. You even have like a mark, from today. We just came up from downstairs.
Not even to mention we worked out this morning too.
Right.
So
7 a.m.
Yeah, that 40-minute workout.
The workout's good. I mean, the workout, if CST is true, then the thing that causes us exertion or adaptation is the thing that we're training for, to compensate for. So when somebody says, are you fit? You have to ask, fit for what?
Right.
Am I fit to fly? That's my job. I sit in an airplane and I collect viruses and bacteria.
Hopefully not that one from China, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, our normal cold flu is actually more deadly currently to us than the epidemic that's happening. We're constantly assaulted with bugs. But the point is, like, do you train in a way that opens the pathogen window? Are you so exhausted and fatigued that you have beaten down your own immunocytes? Or are you training in a way that creates a hermetic seal? It shuts the window tight and nothing can get in. I haven't been sick in years. And it's not a bragging point. My goodness. It's not a challenge.
Yeah, I would have bragged, but I lost my throat, my voice like 2 days ago. But I feel the same. I used to.
You fought off the bug, but there was just vocal fold strain. Like that's the whole point. You didn't get sick from it. Yeah. You got irritated and then stopped it. Right? That's what's interesting about training in a way that's specific to your whole system, your neural system, your endocrine system, and your immune system. True martial art training should be that way. And TACFIT and CST were intended to be all of the martial art training without any of the fighting. Like what is the foundational training approach that allows you to be able to practice your sport or your skill or your art for the rest of your life?
That's it.
Like as long as possible. So if it's a generative approach rather than a destructive approach, then like my coach said to me, eventually the bodies of your enemies will float downstream. They're just going to get beat up over time and have to stop. It's
crazy, 30 years old. Like, I couldn't do one push-up when I finally got to the UFC because of not training the right way, just not understanding these things, right? These principles, the CST principles and TACFIT. This is crazy. And I have friends, right? And these legends, right? They walk with walkers or with the canes at 30 and 40 years old. And, that's why I'm so passionate about TACFIT, is because it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. Just some awareness, some knowledge that you gain with doing the reps and doing the system. It's like, it's kind of like the fountain of youth, but Mr. Miyagi, right? He slapped his hands together and healed Danielson's shoulders. And so I feel like that should be part of martial arts, our martial art training. But it's much more than that. It's like its own martial art, right? People don't have to train in martial arts to get the same benefits by just doing the movements and living the lifestyle.
It has to be taken with the same level of mindfulness then. It can't be just a form of exercise. and you have to think about how does this impact my entire life? How am I responding to this? What's going on for me? Where am I today? Like, doing a check-in. But I do not want to hold myself up to be an example. I hold myself accountable, right? Am I training for me today, for what I want to do? Like, I train to be smarter. I want to be smarter so I can learn more, so I can communicate better, so I can be more present with my family, so I can enjoy the activities that I want to do with my tribe. Like, when I come here, I want to be able to wrestle around with everybody. I don't want to sit in the sidelines on a fold-out chair like an overweight grandmaster. Like, no offense to whoever would tune in. I don't mean a judgment by that. What I mean is, I want to be involved. So, am I fit for that? And am I holding myself accountable for it, without judgment? And maybe today wasn't the day. Matt and I finally, we don't see each other very often, but we finally had a chance to roll at the end of class. And I had to say it, like, I'm sorry, brother. That's it. I'm starting to cramp up. I'm dehydrated from the plane. I had everything together for the things I had planned to do, but there's an end. I need to go eat and drink and drink and drink. I'm dehydrated. So be humble. Like, that's what a martial artist is supposed to provide you with. Since TACFIT doesn't have the, let's say, immediate biofeedback of an opponent, you have to be present with yourself and call yourself out when your ego gets that strong of, like, I'm going to hit it. I'm going to get after it today. Should you? Is that necessary? Do you get 100% out of that adaptation, or is it wear and tear? Are you going to live a shorter life or a lower quality life as a result of that? And I'm imperfect. Even the show makes me a little bit anxious because tomorrow I'm going to be better. So today I'm not going to be totally right. So some things, or the way I say it, I don't watch my TED Talk. That was so much catharsis and suffering of trying to disclose. I was there for a moment, and that was 7 years ago. That moment's gone, right? And I think that our daily training should be that way. I let that go. I'm not trying to train like I was with Zurab at 93 World Games. My gosh, I was the reason I broke my arm, not him, right? I was the reason it didn't heal for years. Yes, I came up with an idea as a result of it. It was a wonderful tragedy, but I don't want to do that again.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah, for sure.
The clubbell's healing my elbows, healing my body, making me really, truly strong the right way. I'm getting more mobile and I'm getting strong.
Yeah,
all the different head to toe, including my brain.
and isn't that the point? Like, isn't that the point? What if it's radical? What if we are completely wrong about exercising? That we're not just pieces of pipe and this isn't plumbing. What if we get stronger and better because we get smarter? If that's the type of animal that we are, if we train in a way that increases our self-awareness, our reasoning, our free memory recall, our attentional stamina, our ability to make decisions faster and more accurately, our ability to access language, then the body should follow from that. So how are we training in a way that allows that to happen? The byproduct is fitness, evolutionarily. How many times do I walk into a gym and I see people just getting after it? So awesome. And if you think about that evolutionarily, what would a person be doing if they were breathing like that? They would either be being chased by a predator or being gnawed upon by one. Like, how are you training in a way that's evolutionarily stable? That's how the whole system should be adapting.
There's also another video. It's like longer, about an hour and a half, I think, was a dyslexia talk. And
who was that?
It was your talk.
Oh,
it was your talk. Yeah.
The Michigan.
Yeah.
They're a great bunch of kids and parents.
Yeah. And really, it was really nice to kind of feel like I got to know you better through that talk because you were just so authentic.
You can't unsee that one. Well, that's I don't want to be a persona, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that I've got lots of flaws and challenges and constantly exhuming all of the unnecessary coping skills from my early childhood experiences. Do I need that anymore? Do I need to be defensive there? When a person steals a movement that I did, do I really need to care? Like, good for you. Like, you're doing something new with that. Awesome. Like, why do I need to be attached to those things? I want to be present, not attached. And that process is shedding.
One of the things that you said on that episode in the talk you did was how you had learning disabilities. You were even institutionalized.
Yeah.
And called dumb and all these other things, and then Men's Fitness calls it the world's smartest workout.
Yeah, I wish they could have just said world's smartest coach. like, can you just like?
But I mean, that's what I say. It's just like the brain. You put your brains behind it. It's all the right stuff.
Well,
and up to probably a few years ago. 20 years ago, when you were saying these things, people were calling you crazy, a quack. You go to old forums that I've looked at, and you're like saying things like nicely, and people are just like accusing you of saying all these things, and you battled all these people, and now the science proves it, right? The evidence is there.
Not all of it.
Right, but
it's important for me to say that I wasn't a victim there. I was also a contributor.
Uh-huh.
Like I said things that weren't accurate. I had to go and figure out where I was right and where I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I also didn't always respond well. Like, I wasn't innocent in that whole flame war of the 90s.
We're human, right? We're
Yeah.
human. We're allowed to make mistakes, but overall, as a concept, you're so many years ahead. And I went to the Fasher conference a couple of years ago, and they were saying all these things in Berlin. It was in Berlin. It was a couple of years ago in November. And they were saying all these things of how to train. And you've been saying these things for I don't know how long. I read your things from, a decade ago. And it's all there,
Well,
and they're like saying, "Oh, we did the research shows," but you're saying all these things, all the same things that they're saying.
But look how much farther specialists like Thomas Myers went with all of the studies. He's a huge think tank now.
Yeah,
what they're looking into is at a granularity level that I certainly haven't explored. I had to specialize. I had to choose breathing as the thing I was going to do, but there was this one section by Myers in particular in fascia that I just, when you read something and one thing just jumps out at the page and tries a cross-collar choke. And this thing in particular was that tissues only relax under the presence of 4 chemicals, and only 2 of them you can do: nitric oxide and oxytocin. Nitric oxide only releases when you have nasal breath or slow, effortless breathing. Oxytocin only releases when your tissues feel that they trust the situation that you're in. So not just your self-perception and your attitude towards let's say the stretch or the compensation or the lift, but also, are you doing it in a way, is your form not threatening that tissue? So Myers has found a granular, molecular level correlate to mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't do it in this way, that tissue can't release. That blows my mind. Yeah. I stopped right there.
I started following him. Every person you mentioned, Hannah, Thomas Hannah, Somatics, Thomas Meyer. I started like following. I did a dissection with him a couple weeks ago.
Holy cow!
Dead bodies, untreated cadavers, and I got to spend 5 days with him in the lab, and dissecting the skin and all the way down to the bones and the brains and the hearts, and he's made little talks at the beginning of the day, and he talks about like movement, and there's different types of basically. The psychology is the medicine of time. Movement is the medicine of space, right?
Right.
It's we're like medicine of space, of movement and
He
space
really
in our bodies
innovated
and in
that
our
new
bodies.
notion of spatial medicine. He's establishing
Spatial
that.
medicine, yeah. And so, yeah, that's, it's great because you gave these like, left little trails, and I just kind of follow them and I follow up on these things, but you kind of created this blueprint for me to kind of follow. And I just try to keep learning, and, my brain's working better. I didn't dream for 10 years. So many different health things that were kind of going on with me.
Yeah.
I'm getting up at 3 a.m. now, starting to work and working so it's crazy how much more I can do, how much more life I can live.
Yeah.
And the quality of my life, has improved. I mean, I used to take ibuprofen. I mean, my wife's known me for 20 years, and I took ibuprofen probably every single day since I met her in like 2000. As long as she knew me, and I stopped. I stopped like the week after I did the TACFIT cert.
Mm.
How does that work?
Right. Again, I mean, just
you created a blueprint, right? Okay, now there's some things, but the breath with the structure of the movement, which causes all the immune, the endocrine, and the nervous system kind of responses, right?
There's so much in there.
Yeah.
What was actually the catalyst or the combination
But
or the
it's like-
cascade of events? We couldn't unpack that, but it happened.
It happened,
Yeah.
and you figured it out on yourself, and you're able to replicate it.
I'm able to help people ask the right questions of themselves. I think that's what good coaching is. How are you feeling that?
Mm-hmm. How do you feel exactly?
Yeah.
I know how I feel.
Yeah.
And I know how others have felt in our classes after training. People have been training for over 4 years since we've been doing it, and they've stuck with it.
Yeah.
Like they're addicted to it, because and they know how it makes them feel.
Right. That shift in perception from outcome to income, I think, is the critical paradigm that we need to hold on to. And that's why it's martial art. It's like what's going on inside of me rather than these outcome-based expectations. I have to move this amount of weight. Yeah, you need a plan, but you need a plan in order to depart from the plan. How am I responding? Should I do this? Well, then I can throttle back. The plan is really just a bluff. Here's what I could do today. And I think, I look at Matt because I have an accountability buddy. Every day I send him what I do, and I ask him to check me. Like, does this sound necessary? Does this sound true? Does it sound accurate? And I ask that humbly because I need to make sure that I don't start running off the rails. But the reason I bring that up is that I think training for me is just become completely intuitive now. Like, I don't have a plan. The plan is my life. And each day, maybe a few days out, like I know I got to fly this amount of distance. I've got to wake up and I have to present this to really important people that are much brighter than me. And then I need to be able to go home, go back to my hotel and make sure I'm present for that really important FaceTime with my kids, and not press my wife's patience too much. So am I there? Like that's every day is a different training program based upon that. But I think that's a process. Like I feel like I'm at the beginning. Like I have a black belt now in my training, and it's not mastery at all. Like I just know, okay, now I know how to ask myself questions. Should I do that? This is how that feels. Now I'm going to go this direction. I can remain centered in the cascade of all of the stresses and challenges that happen around me. That's why it's martial art.
One of the things that you mentioned with Matt, he's your accountability buddy.
Yeah.
But you're humble enough, like you teach us. You're our coach, our master coach, and but you're humble enough to, take coaching. You get coached by your own people that you've trained, and help. You listen, right? You even listen.
Well, if I'm a good coach, I better be able to help other people be able to
But
coach, right? So I should listen to them. If I don't listen to them, that means I'm not good at coaching.
Right. But it's of course, it's the right way, yeah. But what happens? How do you tell me why should you stay humble? What does that do? Like not being a know-it-all. How does that, what happens in your brain? What happens in your body when you stay humble? Why is it good to stay humble? Why should you not be a know-it-all?
Let's say we get hooked up to a polygraph, to a lie detector, and I tell myself something that I don't 100% believe. Now, I could be a psychopath. Psychopathy would give me a lot of confidence because I just don't care, right? But if I'm not a psychopath and I'm hooked up to a lie detector and you ask me a question and I answer with 70% truth, 30% of my body is going to respond to the deception. My body screams the truth somehow through protection. It braces. You can put me up to EMG, electromyography. You can see the muscle. You can see the microvolts increase because it wants to protect itself. I'm talking about lying and I'm starting to spasm. I bring that up because if you're not humble, then your body's going to try and protect you against your own stupidity. It doesn't trust you. You create conflict within yourself that creates the problems that you're going to have. Maybe not now, but maybe when you get home and you reach up to grab that can out of the cupboard and suddenly something tweaks. So you wake up in the morning with neck strain. Like you can't directly show a causal relationship, but you set up patterns of tension in your body. Hopefully one day we'll have the ability to do full holographic rendering of different changing stress patterns and load on the body in different situations. Maybe that's necessary. I don't know. But if you lose your humility, you're going to set up a fulcrum that will eventually become a rupture. So that's why I ask him, and he'll come over and he'll unnecessarily give me more crap than I need. But then he'll
in a good way though. It's all in good fun.
But he'll say, he's like, "Do you want your knee to go in like that?" Like, no. Well, yeah. I'm like, okay. So, and that's just enough humor to keep it real, right? Like nobody needs to be parochial about this and say that's the right way and that's the wrong way.
Right.
Is that the right way? Like maybe not. Maybe my technique is not your technique. So even though he was joking and my knee shouldn't have been falling in, my knee was falling in because of long duration flying, crossing my legs, only sitting on the left side window seat. So leaning to the side started to set up positional adaptations that when I went to exercise, those little micro changes of hours and hours and hours of fixed position started to become posture, which started to become strengthened through my fitness. So I was becoming unfit, or I should say, I was becoming stronger at being unfit. So having a mirror.
Well, it's also me making sure that I know like proper coaching cues, like, is this a new technique that he's trying out? And like, do I need to know this?
Feedback.
Yeah. So like, I'm always willing to ask questions. Like, is this something I should be paying attention to?
I was being sarcastic.
So
No, but you're absolutely right.
yeah, it's one of those things that like, I'm always trying to learn. So again, the humbleness of it, like he's doing something, I'm paying attention to what he does because he's my coach. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question because this is how we did it the last time. Like, is this something new that you're developing? Do I need to know this? Like, or like, are you just fatigued? And then is that now like me coaching him? It's a back and forth. So it's never like an insult. It's always just learning.
Our mutual friend called that presuming noble intent. If you presume noble intent, then you ask questions. Yeah. If you ask questions, then maybe there's a reason
Noble
for
intent.
that.
Like that.
Stolen.
I guess I just look at, your ego, right? If you think, you're all that, it stops you from learning, right? Your cup is full, right?
Oh my gosh. But if you get old enough, you know that if you're full of yourself, eventually that sack of crap is going to break somewhere and you're going to end up with an injury. Do I have to learn this lesson again? Oh my gosh. Like in November of 2017, he and I were rolling together. I happened to land the wrong way. And through lifting just imperfectly, dehydration, travel stress, wanting to do too much, not being humble, I set myself up and I cut part of my ulnar nerve. and then you saw that I couldn't move my arm. And that with that.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, the whole left side of his body shrunk.
It's all your fault.
Yeah. But look what we learned from it. So take it for what it is. You're welcome. I don't.
Matt, we all appreciate
Oh my God.
the
Oh my
education
God.
that came out of your attack.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I call Scott the GM, the Grandmaster. You hurt the Grandmaster. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. But that really is the point. We're all trying to learn from our mistakes so that we don't have to relearn it. And humility keeps us from having to go again through the revolving door. Like, maybe it's a spiral. Maybe it's not a circle. Maybe I go up a little bit, but I'm back at this, and I have to learn a little bit more about that situation. What's going on with my thoracic outlet? Do I need to do that exercise? Can I do a variation on that exercise to get the benefit that I was looking for, the need behind the need, but do it in a way that doesn't challenge that history that's there in my body? So customizing the technique. Like for me, it's doing a Romanian deadlift instead of doing a deadlift. So I can keep my rhomboids on, keep my thoracic outlet open, get the benefit of the posterior chain, which shuts down from flying all the time, and deadlift becomes therapy. But that's my technique. You may not have to do that. There are people with totally fine lower backs.
Yeah, hanging out with Thomas Meyer and doing his courses and listening to him. He was at the fashion conference giving kind of lectures. Even during the lunch breaks, some of the leaders would go out and just talk, and he could just sit in. And one of the things that I appreciated that I always took with me is he was always humble. He thinks, but they don't know anything. We don't know anything.
Yeah.
These Nobel Prize nominees on the stage, they think, but they don't know.
Right.
Same thing with the way you are. You're being humble, and but I appreciate that. And I think,
Science makes you humble. I mean, because if you improve your understanding of science, you realize that you're not proving anything. You're just disproving more things. And then you're just going to have to assume for now, this is the most convincing set of lies.
The best we know right now.
That's right. Right. And that's why nutrition can seem weird because we know so little about how the whole nutritional genomics piece fits in, and our exposure to environmental insults, our circadian disruption in the lifestyles that we have, the way that we still have medieval approaches to exercise. The only true honest position, academically honest position, is to say this is what we think for now, and we will have a different opinion when further study comes, or we'll have a deeper understanding. And usually it doesn't flip-flop. I mean, sure, there's money behind carbs, but it doesn't flip-flop, and we realize, that was a big mistake. But there was always a portion, there was also always a portion of it that was true, and we just learned more about it.
Right.
Science has made me humble. Yeah.
You brought us the team, and the team leaders a book called Tribe.
Yeah.
And
Sebastian Junger.
I read it a few years ago, and it made me kind of really understand what I'm doing with jiu-jitsu.
How so?
Just the connection, the human connection.
Yeah, and what is that like when it's not there?
And my dad, he was a Vietnam veteran and a Green Beret, and he saw a lot of crazy stuff, and his whole life he's been suffering from PTSD. He had a really tough childhood as well.
Yeah.
And kind of made me understand what he was. It just made me understand him better and understand what I'm really doing day in, day out. And so I try to do my best every day because it really matters. Anyway, just one of the things that I remember from the book was just being authentic, how important it is to be yourself.
Oh my gosh. And it's so liberating, right? But if you actually be transparent, like, this is my poor wife, like, this is what she gets. Like, I'm so sorry, but this is it, right? And I'll give you 100%. If you can accept all of this, you're going to get all of it, right? And if you have a social contract where you have a very tight-knit group of people that trust you enough to be vulnerable and authentic and transparent, then you grow as an organism, right? That whole ecosystem starts to become more connected. Everybody grows. And on the days that any individual lags, because they're in a tribe, they aren't lost. There's another great book, Susan Pinker. She wrote something called The Village Effect. And traveled,
Village Effect.
Yeah. She traveled around the world to all the blue zones where we had the most amount of centenarians. How many people live beyond 100? And I'm sure you've heard some of the studies about that they tend to drink wine a lot. And there was all this science like, what is it about wine that makes you live beyond 100? Like nothing about wine makes you live beyond 100. Sure, there are good things in it and there are bad things in it, but what are they doing when they're having the wine?
Having fun.
That's right.
Laughing.
Yeah.
That's right. So she looked at and she categorized what are the top indicators of longevity. And the ones that we expected were not. Quitting smoking, quitting boozing. I think they're number 4 and number 5. Clean air, exercise, good diet, 5 through 7. Number 1 and number 2. Number 1, social integration. Number 2, close personal relationships. So number 1, when I walk into Legacy and I haven't seen somebody for a very long time, and we get a chance to train together and we say hi, and like, hey, how you doing? And I noticed that you just got married. Congratulations! Like, good for you. He's a wonderful guy. We aren't friends, but we're connected, and that's social integration. We're not friends in the true sense of the word. Like, I'm going to be in touch with you. I'm going to lean on to you, but we're there and we're interconnected. Close personal relationships are number 2. So why is that? What is it about the tribe that allows me to live a long time? Because any one day I could be lagged. My accountability buddy, I think of him when I don't train, and I think about him when I train too excessively. And I think he's going to read these numbers and he's going to give me a crap per week, right? So
Reps on reps on reps.
We really have to do that story. But the point is that when you have that connection, in this case, it's a close personal relationship. In another case, it's I'm going to come to Legacy and this is my tribe, right? And if I step on the mat and I haven't been taking care of myself, I'm letting them down, right? And then they should feel the same way. Am I practicing self-care? Am I improving upon my ability to be present with my tribe, with my family, and with my life, with myself, my intrapersonal development? If you feel that, accountability is the number 1 guarantor of behavioral modification. So if you feel that, then when you don't have that, and you believe that you have to depend upon yourself alone, I mean, none of us are getting out of here alive. And ultimately, it's just going to be us and our creator. Like, that's the last relationship. But on the way through, did we enrich each other's lives? Did we make it a little bit easier to go through this process from cradle to grave? Today's the 1-year anniversary of my mom's passing. And she was the strongest person I've ever known, 100%. I can't think of a better day to spend than with you, like with my tribe, with my village, so that that becomes a generative thing. It's a celebration. Like, I represent all of the investment of her life, everything that she did in her life, the first female steelworker in Pennsylvania, everything that she did is represented in me living my life the best way I can, improving, addressing my flaws, all of my imperfections, confronting them, and trying to be a better person, and then forgiving myself, like letting go. Right? Yeah, that thing was pretty crappy. That was really bad. Like that. Are you willing to let it go? I have to do the best I can where I am, and that's the village, I think.
Raising the bar for all of us, showing us that we can live our best lives. In your way has been through movement, right? The blueprint. It's been
That makes me really uncomfortable. I don't,
If I say that right.
I don't know if I'm raising the bar, other than I'm sharing how I'm holding myself accountable right now to living today how I believe is in my best use. And I'm not doing a perfect job, but I'm doing a better job than yesterday. Yeah. And surrounding myself with people who will help me and that I can help. But that comes into like the origin of TACFIT. And TACFIT was designed for addressing the extreme amount of stressors that come from exposure to trauma, like a paramedic or a firefighter or a police officer or a dispatch caller or a soldier or the support staff for the soldier or the family of the soldier. The ATF Bureau used to be called the Violent Crimes Bureau because of the amount of exposure to violent crimes that they had, the domestic violent crimes. And they had the #1 suicide rate of any federal agency. A woman named Katrina Masterson came in and developed a resiliency program for them and reduced suicide to 0. Because let's address how are you processing this? When you see this, if you see something that's stressful, like who goes to an action movie or a horror movie and doesn't jump startle, like or flinch? I don't like watching martial art movies. I don't even like watching fights because my mirror neurons. If I increase my emotional intelligence, I'm going to become more responsive to what I'm experiencing. So I have more funk in me. I'm going to be a better mirror. So I have to practice more intelligent strategies. So if that's true, then imagine what happens to our first responders and what happens to their families who have to carry that burden. So how do we address that cognitive load and emotional activation that they experience at the job? The response has been, let's train them harder, which is, you need to train. Everybody has experienced a workout where you squeeze yourself like a sponge and you feel this relief.
I mean, that's been my life until I met you.
Well, but the point is when you get to the point where you release endorphins are your body's natural morphine, and we release morphine because somebody is eating us, like so that we don't have such a painful death, or maybe one more chance I can rip away from this arm that you're chewing on and escape. So how do I train in a way that can process out the replication of trauma that I've observed or experienced? Not to take that away, but I want to put this in there that a very small percentage of PTSD is actual combat related. The bulk of PTSD is from either experiencing trauma to you or observing trauma happen. So in the case of the ATF, when Masterson resigned, she retired, and they removed the resiliency program that she had in for the ATF, suicide started to increase again because we were no longer practicing self-care. Now they've changed it. They have some really squared away people. They're working hard to look at what causes trauma. But the point is that when you don't have something actively in there, then the body processes that in a negative way. TACFIT was designed to look at how do I train on a daily basis that it's not just about trauma, right? It's about stress. Trauma is the far end of the pole. We've all experienced trauma. We all have to process that out. But the stress happens on a daily basis. And what if it's not stress? What if I'm really excited and I love my life and I love my job? That doesn't mean I don't feel decline because I can overdo it just because I love it. That's not stress, that's load. So cognitive and physical load still needs to be compensated for. So even if it's not trauma, even if it's not stress, even if it's something you love, you don't have any type of negative emotion attached to it, load itself needs to be compensated. Tactical fitness means specifically addressing your fitness requirements. How do I look at stress is stress is stress? everything that happens to me today, I'm the sum of it. I can't compartmentalize my exercise. So how do we address that? And to be honest, I had to come into TACFIT somehow. So you had a podcast with Ryan Provencher, and I had just gotten finished watching Braveheart, and I decided I have an idea. And I said to my wife Jody, I said, I have an idea. She's like, it doesn't look like you have an idea. It looks like you have.
You just watched Braveheart.
Yeah. And I said, well, I'm going to go pick a fight. And she just shook her head and she's like, okay, have a nice day. So I left and I walked over to the fire department and Ryan Provencher was there. And I said, look, I was trying to organize this fitness competition, but it was for firefighters, but I went to the police department and I wanted to present it for them too. And they said, well, we could easily beat the firefighters at that. I hadn't been to the police department. And Ryan, his shoulders went back and like, we will destroy those cops. I'm like, oh, okay. If you say so, I mean, if you want to do a competition with them, then, I can organize it and maybe we could collect pledges to help with the Boys and Girls Club that burned down. And then all of those money for reps will just go to that. So it'll be for a good cause. And then you could show those cops. And then I ran over to the police department after that, and I went to the head of training there, and I said, you won't believe what the firefighters just said. They said they're going to kick your butt. So, and of course they're like, those lazy, sleeping. Well, a lot of other choice words. And that became the first TACFIT competition where we had two tribes come together for a healthy cause. For getting money for a burned down Boys and Girls Club. So there was a good outcome. It wasn't competition based, it was philanthropy based. So that shifted the nature of the competition.
What was the goal, or how did you win?
It was the most amount of reps. So you could play to your strengths. Let's say you had great upper body strength, then one of the exercises, the pull up, you could nail out numbers. But if you had great lower body endurance, then the leg exercises you could capitalize there. And they all tried to game it. The firefighters brought in lots of donuts for the cops. But the point being that all of those reps, it didn't really matter who won. The firefighters will say, but we did win. But it didn't matter who won because all of those reps became dollars, and the dollars went to build that. Yeah. It was like $14,000 that they raised for the new Boys and Girls Club building that was built, and that inside of that story, that fight that I picked, was the message that look, we can shift our purpose, we can do something for somebody else, and we can exert ourselves in a way that's not just a generative for the total amount of stress that we're experiencing in our lives, the sum of our day, but also as a tribe, as a village, and not just two separate villages. Like it was very sneaky in that it made a village out of two tribes by pulling them together for a common cause.
I mean, like jiu-jitsu does that, right? You fight with each other, but then you connect with each other. I mean, I go to these master world championships, and guys from opposite teams or rival teams, right? We're like best friends now.
Wow.
Like you hated each other. Like you could even maybe some of them fight in the street if you saw them, And now, like, because of the connection, we're enemies, but because of but we respected each other, right? Because they were good and they were tough, and it made us raise the bar, right, and ourselves. They helped us, right, in a way, and we realize that as we're older now, we're more wiser. Yeah. But we're like best friends, the people that we used to compete against, and I'm not the only one, but other people as well.
And that's it.
It's beautiful, And now that we're older, doing the master division, it's just there's just such a deep respect, and we just appreciate, those moments, right?
Well, even think about that going to different jiu-jitsu academies. Right. That was never a thing. So, like, I'm so fortunate and thankful that I get to come here and practice the art that I love, that you love too. And now, like, I learned a lot of cool stuff today. So it's great because now I get this opportunity that when I get to travel, I get to stop at random places and learn from cool people who in the old days that wouldn't have been a thing.
Still not everywhere, right?
No.
And it's not that everywhere in fitness. It's not everywhere in martial art. And you bring that to the environment. As soon as you reach out, you become the glue for the new village, right? You co-create that at the same time. You've done the best job that I've ever seen of creating, like, you build it and they come. You filled the village just by building the opportunity. And what you're doing now with TACFIT is the same way. And but that village is going to be worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind. There's people doing TACFIT worldwide already. They just didn't have the support, right? And kind of the culture, right, where everybody's separate on their own. And that's the reason why we kind of have this logo, right? It was 2 club L's at the beginning, right? And now it's 4. And we're worldwide. We just needed, like, the right, I guess, platforms, right? In ways. So
the new design represents the new vision, right? And I think by you coming up with that design, the circle keeps expanding.
You've given the blueprint for all of us. I just read and I practice and I try again.
I just ask questions.
You ask the questions and you make us think.
Yeah.
So you were saying about the new vision. I interrupted you.
That's all right. That's all right. I just don't like all of the attention being focused at me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But really, because if it becomes about a person,
right,
it failed.
Right.
How many techniques are out there named after the person?
Right.
And it becomes the thing. And
we're way past that, at this point with all of us all around the world doing it.
You have to be an iconoclast. You have to distrust when it is about one way. And how many martial arts styles are there? As many styles as there are people in the room, right? How many versions of this technique are there? As many as there are people in the room. So that expanded vision, I mean, we should be humble enough to realize that TACFIT isn't finished. It's still cooking. Like, we should be refining it. What about the audiences we haven't reached? I mean, what about assisted living communities? What about urban challenged youth? What about the prison system? Like, what are the populations that are the untouchables? What are the populations we're not reaching or afraid to talk to? I think about my son, and he always was challenged. Like she was related to our family. Grandma Fran she just passed away, 105,
106,
106.
Yeah.
And my son never knew what to say. He was always nervous around her because of her age. And one day he said to me, he goes, well, what do I say to her? And I said, why don't you ask her a question? Like, let her do the talking. It was like 30 minutes later that she just like, somebody asked me a question. That's great. And I can tell you about the entire century, right? It's reaching out to that. You ask a question and you open the door. Like, what's going on for you? Like, what is that like? What's the worst part of that? What's the best part of that? Once you open the dialogue through question, then you create opportunity and you create connection. So how far can we expand the circle? And it comes through with authenticity and with transparency that this is my own process. Like, this, what I'm doing is not what you should do. And maybe what I'm doing looks squared away right now. I promise you in a few weeks, I'll make a huge mistake, right? And then I'm going to have to learn from that. But the point is, what's going on for you? How do we make that a little bit easier? By making it harder, maybe, right? That is how I see your redesign on the logo and why it's so valuable to look at. Everyone is a new opportunity to pick up the club bell, to carry the torch to a new community. And that's why it's doubling exponentially, right?
Well said. So TACFIT is for everyone.
If it's if it's doing what it should do, if you believe that what you're doing is for a limited population, then that isn't TACFIT, right? Tactically specific, meaning does it address specifically all of the things that are happening for you? If that's true, then is it about you? Like what's going on for you today? Like, and you go right back to it, right? As soon as you think it's about a thing, like that lawnmower pole is so awesome, everybody should be doing it. Really? I don't think so. Not everybody should be doing it. There are populations that shouldn't do it. And then what about the current programming? Current programming needs to change. I was working with a quadriplegic, and there was a group of really grumpy people that were with them, a small population of very, very grumpy people. And this guy was so effervescent. He's like, "Let's do it. Can you help me? Let's go down to the gym. Can you rig something up so I can do a pull-up?" And I stopped the class. I'm like, every one of you, he's the new teacher here. Like, this is the guy. Like, that's the attitude. Like, he was just so excited. And we figured it out. We did something. He had some access to limb appendages, and we geared it up, and we did something that resembled a pull-up, and it was like he was so elated and so excited. How was that canon to TACFIT? Was that in the TACFIT programming? Nope. But if the TACFIT formula is true, then it should be adaptable to every individual.
Yeah, that's it. That's how I feel. It's for everyone. It's for everyone. You know, like some people think it's just for people like elite athletes, elite operators, but it's for everyone. You can have in our class, right? Somebody that just came off the couch. My mom did it, in her 70s.
So awesome.
With an Olympic athlete all at the same time.
That's so awesome, and that's what it is. We should be able to stand right next to each other, and we're doing the same formula, but appropriate to us. And 2 years ago, I was able to lift a 10-pound dumbbell with my left arm, and it was so frustrating. And there were a lot of calls, right?
A lot of nasty phone calls.
No, it weren't nasty. It was
helpful.
It was feeling frightened.
Yeah.
I was scared because I'm left-handed. Like, what if I can't write? And I need to handwrite. I can't learn by typing.
You're left-handed.
Yeah. If I don't write something down, the way I learn something is I read a book, and then I go back and I read it again, and then I highlight the sections that are pertinent, and I go back and I read again, and I underline what is the key message out of every highlighted section, and I go back and then I transcribe what I had underlined into a journal, and then I have it memorized, and I'll never forget it. And that seems tedious, but that's the only way I could learn. Like, other people like, well, I can read it and I can learn it. Good for you, right? But I can't do that, so I have to read a book 4 times. Without handwriting, that broke my formula. So thank God I didn't have to figure out an alternative. And I'm sure there are. But this one worked for me. So for the 10 months that we weren't sure what the rehab would do, like how long would it take? And I asked him, I called him up and I said, so Matt, if I get the thoracic outlet to open up, will it be like a garden hose that's been cinched and suddenly the neural drive will just fire down? And Matt said, I don't think it's ever worked that way. So you should probably be patient.
It was always, wait and see. Like, we'll see how you feel tomorrow. It's, for everyone, any injury, it's totally different. So it's, all right, this is what we'll try today. Let's see how you respond to it. We'll push the limits, but also know, like, when we have to pull back a little bit. But no injury is exactly the same. So, exactly like the exercise, like, you have to feel that out, and then we take it from there. So, I check in on the next day, and how do you feel? He's like, a little bit more movement here, a little less movement here. I'm like, all right, so how do we go about this? Like, what do we need to do to, improve here, work here, and then we brainstorm, and then it's just like, all right, like, just realize this is a journey. It's a marathon.
0.1 millimeters per week, that nerve regrows. 0.1 millimeters per week. So it was so slow and tedious and hopeless. And that's the real battle. right? When you're alone, you can't deal with the hopelessness because it seems so overwhelming, because it's like looking at yourself in the mirror. You don't realize you're aging until you look at a photo 20 years ago. Like, wow, I was good looking at one time. What the hell happened? But the same thing happens when you feel hopeless. You don't see the progress that you're making because it's strips and drabs. But when you have your support group, when you have your village, then it's enough of a lifeboat to get you through the days, right? To where you can see substantial change every 3 months. And then things start to come back, and then it gets exciting. And then, like, did you learn from this? Are you self-aware that if you head down that road again, you're going to produce exactly the same thing, maybe somewhere else, or maybe a different challenge, but you'll produce the same outcome. That you have done something in a way that causes wear and tear, that created a rupture. I don't want to relearn that. Maybe I'm wiser because of it. That's not, just because you choked me out doesn't mean that I need to be choked out every time and have to have this raspberry in my face. Maybe I could learn from that. Yeah.
You keep bringing up the team, and and then you asked me like what stuck with me in the tribe book, and it's the group. I mean, I believe in the group. I believe in the team because that's how I came up. That's how I learned jiu-jitsu. And I believe in that for TACFIT, that's the way we grow and we evolve and really do our best, right? Be our best. And going back to the tribe book, he talks about people in war and they're, getting bombed and, not sleeping and suffering and seeing their friends being blown up, and they come back home and, it's safe here, right? There's no bombs. There's no people aren't not dying in front of them, but they want to go back into the battlefield because there's people right next to them in the bunks, and there's that human connection. There's
lost connection.
Yeah, and we can in LA here, it's 10 million people, something like that. But you can be all alone.
Yeah,
and by
right.
yourself. There's people everywhere, but everybody's just separate. You can be
alone
all by
in the crowd.
Yeah,
yeah,
and like a TACFIT Academy or my jiu-jitsu gym. It helps, it helps. Like, you get the same bonding things happening that you get on the mat in jiu-jitsu in TACFIT.
I hope that we can export that concept, right? It's not even about the TACFIT Academy or the jiu-jitsu gym. It's that is a petri dish where we learn to connect. And if we don't have a place to learn how to connect, it's really difficult to learn how to connect, especially when you meet a stranger and meet a stranger and meet a stranger. I mean, my favorite thing now is I travel, so I get 2-minute relationships. I meet somebody at the front desk at the Delta Lounge, and I'm like, hey, how are you doing today? And they look up like, holy cow, he's really talking to me. He's like eye to eye engaged. He's actually gives a damn. Like, what's going on? And then a dialogue occurs, and they ask how you're doing, and that connection, it could mean that person's day, and it makes my day. Like, I feel better and more connected, but I learned that in a petri dish. I learned that through our village. And it's funny, like the police and the firefighters are two different tribes that became a village. What you've done with jiu-jitsu and TACFIT is very much like that, right? Except not competitive with each other. So when you bring two tribes together, there's accelerated learning because you see, look, this happens over here and here. And when you see it in two different places, then you realize it's a formula. This is how I can be with everybody. And then you go to visit a new community and you realize this is another tribe. I hope they can come into my village. I hope I can expand my circle. I hope they can pick up the club bell for them, the proverbial club bell, not the real club bell. But that's it, right?
Yeah. TACFIT's for everyone. Like, I go back to my days like living in Brazil, and I think it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm always going to call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because of my time living in Brazil and really connecting, and like a lot of my old friends, like they're from those days. It's super interesting, and it really helped me. It really helped me in my life. Like, my dad wasn't around when I was a kid, and it really gave me a lot of confidence, and allowed me or gave me the bonds with like different guys. And it sounds all like weird, but it really helped me in my life. It really grounded me, and I was already an adult. I was 18, but it really formed me as a man, and I feel like laid the foundation for me to really go after to be my best.
Yeah.
for success, to be happy, so I'm always super grateful, and going back to that tribe and the team, I really believe in it. And
there was this great guy named Ben that I was on the U.S. team with, the first U.S. team I was on, and we were getting ready for World University Games that 1993, and we went to college together. We were in the same dorm floor, and I was rapping on his door at 4 a.m. and he opens the door all bleary-eyed, and he's like, "Sonnon, what do you want?" I'm like, "Dude, this is all going to end. Like this is all going to end. Let this Saturday, let's go do something, because one day you and I aren't going to be connected like we are now. We're going to move on. Like let's go do something." And I know I was a bit of a whack job back then, but it was the first time that I really realized that, because I hadn't had it as a kid. I had one friend, and he passed away. I had one friend. When I had a team, it changed my life, and I felt included. I felt like this is synergistic. There's something bigger than the sum of these parts. And from each team, from each community that I was exposed to, I saw that. And how do we do this? How do we create an intentional village? How do we create mutual support? And why? Like, why should we do that? I think that we have a pretty good idea of how we can create it. I think we have an 80% solution. I'm never completely sold that we have the right approach so that we can continue to grow. But I not only is TACFIT for everyone, but the circle's growing, right? It's part of something.
For sure. No stopping it. 1 billion people, changing 1 billion people's lives around the world.
If it's not ambitious enough, I don't think it's really worthy. Like if you set that goal, then you're going to think it in a divergent way. The linear thinking would be, how do we have the best fitness system, right? And the best fitness system should attract the most amount of people. But instead of that, why don't we use your perspective of how do we reach this number of people? And by reach, it's not send them a program or they get a flyer in the mail. It's how do you expand the circle large enough that they're part of the village? If you have a lofty goal like that, then you're going to reverse engineer. Well, here are the steps that I'm going to need to take, and these are pretty radical. If this has never happened before, I have to do things that I've never done before. And that was the one thing that my mom taught me that always stuck with me. She said to me that I don't want you to have the life I had. That means you need to do things differently than me. And that always stuck with me. Like, okay, so if that hasn't been done before, then probably I'm going to learn from the past, but I'm going to have to create some kind of innovation. I'm going to have to do this in a different way. And that's going to be grandiose, and people are going to attack you and troll you and flame war you. Yeah. But you know what? They haven't done it yet.
You've rolled with the punches.
Yeah.
It's you can just Google it. Things from back in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s.
Oh my gosh, the Wayback Machine. Have you ever gone to that?
No, but there's enough stuff out there with.
There's a website that goes Wayback Machine, and I was just looking back at it. I'm like, there were like civilizations of trolls, built upon civilizations of trolls, and again, I'm not innocent in it, because sometimes I would get angry and and defensive and inaccurate. Like I didn't know what I know now. So the way I expressed it back then was not always right, and sometimes was wrong. But that is my reason for saying that is what you're doing right now with TACFIT is going to create resistance. Just like if I change my diet, it adversely impacts my kids and my wife unless I include them. I can't impose that on them. So if you change the entire fitness industry, there's going to be resistance because you've changed everything that's in the cupboard.
I know what's right. I know what it's done for me. I know what it does for the people.
But you're also opening the door to them, right? You are making this inclusive.
Yeah.
Like if you have this why are we doing this? Because it should be for everyone. Everyone should be helped. You're not excluding any other system. It's for everyone. That's right. but you're challenging the myopia then. You're challenging a person that says this is the right way to do it, and this is the only way to do it. How do you know that? I don't even think that about myself. Like I actually, if you say that, that's the only thing I'm certain is wrong.
You know, like I love jiu-jitsu, obviously, but not everybody can do jiu-jitsu. You know, like been married for 20 years, and you know, she's done a class or a seminar one time, but you know, I get it. And some people don't like to be, you know, sweat going in their mouth or in their eye. But
what's wrong with that?
Some people don't like that, and they still do jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I get it. It's not for everybody. You know, some hairy guy, like, you know, sweating all over you or whatever it is, right? But you know, I believe it's a tool for us to be our best. You know, but you can get the same benefits by doing TACFIT that you can get from jiu-jitsu. And I'm just like mind blown, and it just, you know, and then your story, it just fuels me. It fuels me from your childhood, overcoming your childhood traumas, and your mom like believing in you, like being institutionalized, and
it's just a story, right?
Well, it fuels me.
Well,
it fuels me, and
everybody has a story, and that's the whole point. Can you bring your story? Because like Simon Sinek said, people don't buy your how, they buy your why. Like what is the why of you doing this? And your why is your greatest motivator. What's the need behind the need behind the need? Why are you training today? Because behind that need, like why do you want to be more fit? Well, I want to have more energy throughout my day. I want to be able to do things. Why do you want to do that? Because I want to play with my kids. I didn't get to play with my parents. I really want to get to play with my kids. Or maybe I did get to play with my parents. I want that same thing with my kids. And that, if you can't find your why, then expose yourself to people who are sharing theirs, right? And if they're vulnerable enough, if they're authentic enough that they can go out there like, this is who I am, and with complete confidence, it is inspiring to hear another person's story. My mom, before her nerve damage to her back, before she was immobilized, every weekend she would go to the VA hospital, and she'd walk the halls, and she'd sit with the vets, and she'd ask them about their stories. So, you know, what was your partner like, and what are your kids doing, and what did you like to do when you were in high school? And she would just sit there and listen to them, and she'd go to the next room and to the next room, and she'd just listen to their stories. And then she did it in Civil Air Patrol. So she became a captain in the Civil Air Patrol for the kids. And she'd ask the kids, so why do you like planes? Like, and she was amazing. I think I learned that Socratic method from her. I learned about it from college, but it was about what my mom did. Like, and I find out someone's why, and you have created connection. I think that's what we are orienting this initiative toward, like, collectively.
You know, I keep bringing up your childhood and the traumas you had to overcome. You know, where do you think that the strength came from to kind of persevere your martial arts journey, traveling to the Soviet Union, studying there, coming back? I mean, putting out, not an encyclopedia, but like a library of information. That drive, where does that come from? Where do you think that comes from?
I ask myself that question a lot. And I see the shoulders I stand on. I see what my mom was able to do. Like coming out of losing everything in the divorce with my dad and creating a new life, right? And fighting for it. I remember this time, I don't want to put too much family in because, you know, with respect to my other family, but there was this time that my mom was being beat up by a drunk boyfriend, and he kicked open the door in our trailer, and she ran us back to this one toy room and locked and closed the door while her drunk boyfriend was trying to beat in the next door. she elbowed and broke the glass of the one window and lifted me and lifted me, 5'2", and lifted me and put me out the window. I think it was 4
years old.
Yeah. And she said, run to the neighbors, call the police. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's fine. Like, don't worry, just go, run. And I remember running and looking back over my shoulder and just seeing the silhouette of my mom's hair in the room as he had finally kicked open the door and just attack her. And the courage of my mom and what she had endured, you can't not be affected by that. You can't not be affected by seeing somebody withstand such challenge. Whatever the traumas were, her example was stronger. I don't, and my challenges are not great. I look back on my childhood and I look at what other people face. Like, if you feel discouraged, look at somebody else. If you walked a mile in someone else's shoes, you'd beg to have yours back. Like, that, you think yours are really significant,
right?
But you go to somebody else that's in a worse situation, and then I remember a story. I was sitting waiting to meet my yoga teacher, great woman named Amma, and I was waiting in line. She would see thousands of people over the course of a weekend, and I was in my neck had rebroken again, and I was in constant pain, and I couldn't take narcotics because my brain gets too fuzzy, and I can't think straight. And that's the case for most people, but I can't hold thought timing. So when I have some type of pharmaceutical intervention, I lose the thought, I have it again, I lose the thought, I have it again, and I feel like I'm on this revolving door mentally, and it's frightening, right? So I can't have narcotics, so I'm just sitting there in pain, and tears are running out of the sides of my eyes because I wanted to see her, like, and she's just full of love, and what a wonderful woman, and inspirational. And this guy, I feel this hand on my shoulder. The person that's sitting next to me is this little Indian guy, and he looks at me and he said, hey, are you okay? Are you doing all right? And I turned to him and I was about to explain to him, like, you don't even know how bad I am. Like, this pain in my neck is so bad. And I look at him, and he had worse than 3rd-degree burns. Some of his limb had been removed from the burn that he was in, and he was just smiling at me, like asking, are you doing all right, buddy? All you need is perspective, right? So when I do not want to romanticize my childhood, I do want to look at the example that my mother presented in those circumstances and realize that, like, that's what actually, and she wasn't a saint, just like me. Like, she had imperfections, she had flaws. I saw her take out my brother with an iron pan. Like, so like, it was not all hugs and rainbows. So, but we write the story we want. And the story that I want to take from her example in her life is, how are things going for you? What did you like about that? And what was your favorite thing to do? And she just asked those questions, and it would like, well, and you'd start talking, and she would just sit back,
listen,
and there was connection. Yeah.
What advice would you give a 20-year-old Scott Sonnon?
Wow. I don't know if he'd listen. So I don't know if it would matter. Like, you can't teach to where you are. You have to teach one step ahead of where they are. And I really believe that you can only teach by asking questions, to getting them to think just one step laterally. Because wherever we are, we're forward projecting, and we think within this hologram of our life. We think right here. Here's the next thing that I'm doing. Like, I'm thinking about next week and the things that I have to do. And like, whoa. Like, this is it. Like, my buddy Ben in college, like, knocking on the door. This is 4 a.m. This is going to be gone soon. None of us are getting out of this alive. Like, just right here. Like, let's just enjoy this. I don't have to do anything. Like, I could just be right here. I will get to the next thing. When you're 20, you just don't have enough experience yet that it's hard to be patient. 2 weeks is a long time. Like I'm making 5-year, 10-year goals now. Like, okay, in 15 years, I'm going to have this figured out. I'm not like literally, I'm going to, okay, from 15 years from now, I will figure out the solution to that challenge. We will figure out how to do that. That means in 10 years, we have to be able to do this milestone. In 5 years, we have to do this milestone and keep backing up. At 20 years old, you're thinking about, well, on Saturday, I'm going to go for a hike. And then 2 months from now, I'm going to do that tournament. I'm going to win it. Like we're so limited in scope because of the years that are there. I think if I encountered, and do I encounter me all the time? Like, isn't that the point? If this is a real life, then I'm meeting me all the time. I volunteered to go help train some of the football players at my son and my daughter's high school. And I encountered a couple of these kids that had real significant physical injuries. And they were just, you could see they're like just completely obliterated emotionally because they can't play football for their senior year. That's it. They're thinking, that's it. I lost my identity. And I don't get to finish out high school because, football was their thing. And I met with them privately and I asked them questions and like, where's the range of motion? And I shared with them some story. And then I hid that in between the training sets so that they were a little bit relaxed because they're kind of a captive audience. And I tried to hide in some motivation of, I know what it's like to be without a coach. And you kind of have to manufacture your own self-coach. And we're all there and we're all doing this. And you may feel like you're on your own and it may feel like you missed out on this thing, but what if something better is coming? If not this, then that means that something better is coming. And what are you going to take from this? And just asking those questions of those kids, I think is, if I would encounter exactly me now, first of all, I'd say, stop doing that to your hair. But secondly, I would ask a question of like, just wait. Like, what's the reason behind that? Why do you want to do that? And what's behind that? What's your why? What's your purpose? Because as soon as somebody identifies what their current purpose is, they're self-driven. That purpose will change. Just like I talked to my daughter, the purpose changes. She's brilliant and effervescent and charismatic, and it's like she has her current focus, but it's going to change. Like, and in that will be something of it, but it'll just continue to evolve. I think if I met Junior Scott, I would say tortoise, not hare. Like, take your time. Eventually, the bodies of your enemies are going to float downstream, and you can widen your circle and create a large team if you just focus on being transparent. It's really difficult.
Be vulnerable, huh?
Yeah.
Be authentic, be yourself.
My son is doing this great sports performance program with a former pro soccer player. He opened his sports performance gym because I don't, if I want to be of value to my son, this is my perspective. I'm not saying it's for everyone. I do not want him to have the pressure of dad and coach. So I find great coaches. And every day he comes back from it and he's got this like, Dad, so guess what? So right before I do my deadlift, I do this sharp inhale, and then I do this exhale, and I just rip the plates off the ground. You should see them, Dad. I'm like, really? So you inhale, and you get ready to lift the bar, and then you exhale, and it comes right off? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Like, that's awesome. Like, I said that to you 1,000 times, you little punk. But because he hears it one time from somebody that he respects. Yeah.
That's how it is.
So that's really right. He knows.
You have Scott Sonnon as your dad.
That poor kid.
It's funny because I've seen that too. Like, even talking to your son, he'll listen to me before he'll listen to Scott, and I'm regurgitating exactly what Scott says.
Oh, literally.
Right.
Hey, I say, son, you want to go out with us and train? And no, I'm just going to stay here. And Matt's like, oh, come on, I'll go train together. And then Kai will go, okay. What the? But that's the tribe, right?
Yeah. Takes a village.
Takes a village, right?
Takes a village. Do you have any regrets?
Absolutely. Like, if we don't have that kind of time, people are going to shut this podcast off.
Couple. One regret. One. Just one.
Answering questions, not questioning answers. Not being, when you face resistance, digging in instead of asking, what value is that resistance actually bringing me? What do they write about? And when somebody's belligerent in your face, it's really difficult to look at them and say, I hadn't considered that. Maybe you're right. Like what could that pop? Like let's talk about that. And when I do that, what's the worst part about that? And then when they start responding, first of all, they soften, because now it's not position opposition, it's composition, right? Fichte, or was that Hegel? Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. One of them was Fichte, one of them was Hegel. So the point being that when you encounter the resistance, you don't instantly create a counter position. That just gets you swept, right? What I regret most is I didn't capitalize most on all of the resistance that the industry had to the concepts that I was presenting, because I was inaccurate and in some places wrong. So when you're more confident that you're right and you're wrong, it's even harder to see. So I wish I were humbler faster. I learned a lot of humility, because when you're not humble, life asks you to be pretty violently. But if just because you face resistance doesn't mean you're right. Like you need to ask what in the resistance that you're facing is valuable, that you can take away. What can you learn from the situation? And I didn't learn a lot. I could have slowed down this learning process, I think, if I would have been humbler faster. I think life gave me a lot of humility fast, but I wasn't enough.
Besides your wife and kids, of course, what's a happy moment, truly happy moment of your life?
This is a difficult day to say that, right? It's the 1-year anniversary of my mom's passing, but I don't know why it repeatedly comes up when I don't even know what the trigger is. Like, it's just throughout the course of my day. And I think it was because it was just a moment. It was just a moment, right? It was just fully present. And I was 5, and it was in my mom's Thunderbird that had a bench seat. And it was all of that, like a Bakelite handle, and it was like the slick bench seat where she'd take a turn and
everyone would just slide in. Yeah.
And so I loved that. I'd fly into her, and it was a game. But on the radio was "You Are My Sunshine," and we were singing it together. But it might sound corny, but my mom was the most pivotal figure in my life. But it was about the presence. We were right there, just in that moment, completely innocent and wholesome and caring. And I want even my grappling matches to be like that. Completely present, completely responsive, in the moment. I want every workout to be like that. I want every brief to be like that, every presentation. I want to be absolutely there with you, like right now, like here we are, right? Do I need to be somewhere else? Do I need to be armoring up inside? Do I need to be worrying about the perception? Anybody that's watching this in the future, that was me back then, not now. Like the now that you're watching this, that's a different Scott Sonnon. I hope, unless I'm really bad at this. So that one moment, I keep going back to. It just pops into my head, and it makes me remember, whoa. Okay, right now. Come back right now, because you're about to lose this moment. It's almost gone. And how many moments do we have left? And I feel like I'm 25. I know I'm 50. I have potentially less years ahead of me than behind me. And that means I better capitalize on these days. They fly by. Years go by like weeks used to. And what do I want to do with that time? Do I really want to be like just perseverating about challenges and problems? I go back to that moment. Just be right here. Like, be present in it and capture is suck it dry for whatever it is, whether it's just be a rep or a conversation or an acai bowl or whatever it is. Just be right there and just enjoy it. And those moments become your legacy.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you for everything you've done for me and everyone around the world. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Matt.
No, thank you. Thank you for having us.